someone asked me earlier about this guy I used to have with me that would come to the ring. His name was Ralphus. You guys want to hear the story of Ralphus?
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. I could go two ways right now. I can tell you the story of Ralphus, or I can tell you the story of the bad cow. Ralphus. Would you like to hear Ralphus? Yes. Would you like to hear bad cow? Yes. 7 people replied to both. What? I'll go with Ralphus. Okay. So, back in WCW, one day I showed up and there was a pay-per-view called Fall Brawl, and I had no match on it. And Terry Taylor was like, "Oh, you got a match, all right. Well, who's my match against? You're gonna wrestle a midget Goldberg." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "You're gonna wrestle a midget Goldberg." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because it's funny." So this is when Goldberg was in his undefeated streak, and I go, "Goldberg, I challenge you." And out comes this midget, kind of more of a dwarf Goldberg, I think. He's kind of like this tall. So he comes in the ring, and I do the match, and I beat him, and it's all great. And so then it kind of started this ipso facto storyline where I kept challenging Goldberg. And it's funny because I saw Goldberg in the airport the next day. He's like, "Oh, I hope it was worth it, Jericho." I said, "What?" "I hope it was worth it." "What?" He goes, "I got people calling me, texting me about your little Goldberg segment, a little jokey Goldberg segment. I hope it was worth it, Jericho." I said, "Hey man, it wasn't my segment. I didn't fucking book the shit, okay? So just calm down." So then the idea would be that I was kind of challenging Goldberg. And Goldberg at the time, or still does, comes to the ring with a bastion of security with him. And I thought, well, I should probably do something like that. So there was all these guys like from the power plant, all these jacked up like students of wrestling, and I thought, well, I could use some of those guys. I want to use that guy. There was this guy who was a truck driver, and he was always around. He was always, "Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you." And he was a fat guy, and he was bald, and he had like these really fucking weird teeth. There was like 2 teeth that stuck out of the side of his mouth that looked like candy corn. Like, you know candy corn? You guys have that here? Like, it looked like a pylon, like upside down, like just sticking out of the side of his fucking teeth. And I was like, who is this guy? And that's the guy. Like, he was just the weirdest looking guy. And I was like, fuck, I want to use Ralphus. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I want to use this guy. So I went up to him. His name was John Riker. I bet you never knew that was Ralphus's real name. And I was like, "Hey, man, you want to do something with me on TV?" He's like, "Sure. What do you want me to do?" And I was like, "Just kind of walk to the ring with me like serious security guard." He's like, "Sure." And I said, "Would you mind wearing this white t-shirt if I cut the bottom of it off?" Because he was really kind of fat. So his gut would hang out. He's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it. No problem." And so I took a marker and I wrote Jericho Personal Security, JPS, which if we would have sold those things, we probably would have sold like a dozen of them. And there was another guy backstage who looked like Kenny Powers, if you ever watched Eastbound and Down. Danny, what's his name? Danny Glover? What's his name? Danny McBride, that's it. Not Danny Glover, that's the guy from Lethal Weapon. Looks nothing like Danny McBride. And so he was the Jerichoholic Ninja. And I wrote a t-shirt for him, and they walked me to the ring. And this fucking guy was so funny, Ralphus. He didn't have the name at the time. Actually, I got the name from, there's a really cheap horror movie from the 60s called Bloodsucking Freaks. And there's another little person who's like this drunken, murderous midget, and his name is Ralphus. He looks like Hall & Oates, but like a small Oates. Curly black hair, big stash, and his name was Ralphus. And I was really into the movie at the time, so I'm like, I will call him Ralphus. And people go, "How's that Rufus doing?" You ever talk to Rufus? It's not Rufus, it's Ralphus. Okay? So I said, "Listen, man, like, you want to come out with me to the ring every night?" He's like, "Sure, no problem. I'd love to." And here's how it was in WCW. You never had to ask permission to do anything. You just did it. If I just decided to walk to the ring with a fat guy with weird teeth and a half shirt in WWE nowadays, I'd get crucified. You can't just go out there and do that. I remember one time Chavo Guerrero and I were wrestling in Fargo, North Dakota, and we'd wrestled each other 100 times, and every time I was the heel and he was the babyface, and I just beat him. Every night, just beat him. Just killed off this poor guy. And so finally I said to Terry Taylor, who was the booker, you got me beating Chavo again. Like, can we change it up a bit? Can he beat me? He's like, no, you'll beat him again. And this time, you'll break Pepe. And Pepe was this little wooden horse that he was riding around because he was crazy at the time. So, okay, so now I'm going to beat him and break his gimmick? So we're like, we can't do this. So we drove to Toys R Us. We bought a baseball bat and a giant horse head that put on the baseball bat and stuck the baseball bat underneath the ring. We did the match. I went to break Pepe. Then he went under the ring and grabbed Jose, which was Pepe's older brother. And hit me with it after the match. Can you imagine? Nobody knew that we were doing this. Nobody knew that we hit a baseball bat under the fucking ring. And nobody knew that I was going to walk down to the ring with Ralphus, but he started getting over. And what I would do is I said, listen, you got to be serious. If people try and touch me, you say, don't touch him. Don't. Stop. But the guy didn't have an angry bone in his body, so whenever he would do it, he was laughing kind of like, stop it. Stop it. He'd wag his finger. Stop it. Stop it. And he started getting over as like this cult character. And I had a lot of heat at the time. I remember he would just start showing up at house shows. Like at live events. Like, I'm here to work. Like, where did you come from? I drove the truck to Chicago and then I drove here. Chicago's 4 hours away. He drove the lighting truck around, so he drove the TV and then drove over to the show. So I would be in the ring. I remember I went up to the corner and people are booing like boo, boo, and then I hear this big cheer coming from behind me. Boo, boo. I turn around and Ralphus is also standing on the second rope, going like this. All right. And I was like, Ralphus, come here. You can't get cheers from the people. You hate the people. Why? They're nice people. No, they're not. You hate them. Well, they're really nice. I'm like, listen. This is wrestling. You're playing a character. I know, my character's Ralphus. That's right, and Ralphus hates people. Why? They're nice people. Fuck. I start realizing this guy has no concept of what wrestling really is. And then, of course, as any booker will do, because he's popular, they start wanting to use him in matches. And I'm like, guys, he can't do anything. He doesn't know what to do. Oh, it's okay. How hard can it be? So I had a match against Hugh Morris, and Hugh Morris goes to the second rope for a moonsault, and Ralphus is supposed to hold his leg. Ralphus isn't even around. Hugh Morris is waiting. Fucking does the moonsault. Afterwards, I look outside and I see Ralphus talking to some girls, some Ralphus groupies in the front row. And afterwards backstage, he's got a bouquet of flowers. I said, what the fuck happened to you, man? You're supposed to grab his leg on the moon. He goes, well, I know, but the girls in the front row, they like me. They gave me flowers. And I was like, they did? Isn't that? Let me see those flowers. They smell nice. Don't they? Fucking idiot! And I hit him with the flowers. And another time, I'm in the dressing room, minding my own business, getting ready for a match, and Arn Anderson walks in. Hey, Jericho. Gotta take care of your boy. I said, what? He goes, your boy's outside in the truck, banging some rat. A rat is wrestling talk for a groupie, a female companion. Now, I've seen a lot of groupies and rats over the years, but you can imagine the type of rats that Ralphus was attracting. Another day, I'm getting ready for my match with Dean Malenko, and I'm putting my baby oil on. I look over in the mirror behind me. Ralphus is also putting baby oil on. Then I eventually went to the producers of the show and I said, can you give Ralphus some money? Like, he's out there every week. Can you give him $500 or whatever? And so they started paying him $500, and sometimes they forgot. I always go kind of help him out and get him his $500. And one day, it was actually the same day when he was putting on his baby oil, I came over and said, listen, I got to talk to you about something. When am I getting a contract? I said, what? He goes, well, I need a contract. I've been on the show. I need a contract. I'm like, dude, fucking contract? You're not getting a contract. There's no contract for you. And eventually, around the time I was leaving to go to WWE at the time, and I was like, wow, it'd be really cool. Like, fucking Jericho shows up on Raw with Ralphus by his side. Like, I was really thinking that. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? And I mentioned it to him one day. Like, hey, what do you think about going to WWE? He's like, I'm in. We got to get out of here. This place is losing it. Keep in mind, he's still driving the lighting truck around. And then a couple weeks later, he comes over and he goes, so, when are we going to go to New York? Now, New York is slang for WWE, old school wrestling talk. And I'm like, I never once ever called WWE New York to you. Where are you finding this shit out? Now he's all in the wrestling business, like, kayfabe, brother. When are we going to New York? And I was like, we aren't going anywhere. So I went to New York, and then Ralphus, they ended up putting him in matches, and I think he ended up being the hardcore champion where Terry Funk beat the shit out of him, and I was like, this poor guy's gonna have a fucking heart attack. You know, and I thought if they would have put him with the luchadors, like these guys had kind of nameless faces, but if Ralphus was their manager, I mean, of course he would have fucked everything up, but at least they would know his name and know somebody on the roster there, right? But years passed by, and I get a tweet. Hey, I know John Riker. I'm like, you do? I'd fucking love to have John Riker on my podcast. Like, Ralphus, like, how cool would that be? And I sent him an email, and he never got back to me. I got big leagued by fucking Ralphus.